Namaskar and good afternoon. I've been asked to talk about, do languages matter? ভাষার কি দরকার আছে? যদি না থাকতো কি অসুবিধা হতো? কি আসে যায় ভাষা না থাকলে? In fact, a few years ago, while talking at the Senate Hall in Dhaka University, I had given a title to my talk, which was a little poetic. You may or may not like it. ভাষা তুমি কার যে চাহে তাহার? Who do you belong to? One who likes to possess, one who likes to speak, one who likes to revel in, one who likes to have festival with, belongs to that. So, do languages matter is a concern which was expressed in 2008, I think, by United Nations. In fact, UNESCO had declared that particular year as the year of mother tongue, and they had organized an event in United Nations where I was representing India, one of the three speakers from Asian continent, and it was the same topic: languages matter. Now, if you talk about this, I was thinking if there can be a fictional world where there is no uh, thing called language, language doesn't exist, how would that world be? A fictional world without language could be, I think, a fascinating exploration of communication, cognition, and culture. And I'm sure in the Institute of Language Research in Kolkata, ILSR, at this point of time, there are many young authors, writers, thinkers, and language scholars who can be asked to explore what a world like that could be, a world without language. Now, in a world such as this, all those people who are with senses, we will call them sentient beings, they will lack the ability to develop or understand any form of language, spoken, written, symbolic. Instead, the communication can only happen, which is instinctual communication, relying on emotions, telepathic impressions, or bioluminescent displays of their bodies. I'm angry. Now I have some expressions on my body which will be communicated to you through those luminescent display. Or I'm in love. You can easily see that I'm in love. Now, to understand the power of human language, how it can make and unmake the grammar, we can think of some similar situations which have happened in fiction. Uh, and one of the most important thing of language is that language not only makes it possible for you to become friendly with somebody, to empathize with somebody, to help somebody, to ask for certain directions, to ask for solace. It can also be used for domination and subjugation. And that is something which is a very interesting possibility. So let us think first what will happen in a silent world if languages did not exist. What will the nature of that world be? One, it will have an emotional resonance. So the human beings will share their feelings directly, creating a culture where deception is nearly impossible. And conflict will arise only when emotions will clash irreconcilably. So that's one issue. That is, emotional resonance can be seen. That will be the nature of that world. Secondly, there will be physical expression. So dance and theater and mimes and visuals, they become very important. Intricate body movements, the colors, the patterns, that will be the primary way of having an intent being communicated or ideas being exchanged. Now, there has to be a universal grammar of that, color and idea and intent, which will be a complex thing. I don't know how exactly to create that kind of an expression system. Thirdly, without language, there will be no recorded history, no way of passing down knowledge. Now, memory will be only genetically preserved. There will be genetic imprints of memory. And there can be communal rituals that will evoke shared experience. That will be the nature of the silent world. Now, if suppose a world like this exists, if there is no language the way we know language today, then what are the challenges? There will be complex ideas which we want to talk about, which we want to express, but abstract concepts like mathematics, philosophy, or science, that is very difficult to express in this kind of a world. So, if at all they are to be expressed, they will rely on some shared mental framework that language will facilitate. This kind of language will facilitate. That I think of an idea of a formula which I make you think equally at the same time, and both of us share the formula. I don't know. That will be a very complex situation. Secondly, art will thrive in this world as a primary way of expression of individuality and ideas. So, dance, visuals, environmental sculptures, they will be the prominent thing and not literature, no Sahitya. So, no spoken storytelling. Because at this point of time, we grow up when our grandparents narrate the stories, but no, nothing of that sort. It will be mainly communication of culture through dance, visuals, and sculpting images of environment. Next thing is, next challenge is identity. What will be the name? So my name is Uday Narayan Singh. For the Maithil writers, my friends call me Nachiketa. But no, I will not have any name. I'll have only a kind of a name which is maybe some identification object, but the emotional signature associated with my handwriting, with my look, with my name, that will be gone. There will only be a psychic fingerprint. So imagine a world like that. Imagine a fiction like that. What will be next thing happening to that fiction I'm trying to imagine? This story of a language-less world, a world without language, can then have arrival of an outsider. From where? A being from another world who will come and introduce language. Because the creature will come and be surprised that these guys have no language, they have only silence. So he will introduce language. So once the language is introduced in a world of languagelessness, it will disrupt the balance of the silent society, causing a great division. Division between ones who see language as a tool for advancement, something new, new discovery, new idea, new tool, new technology, and those who will fear it as a corrupting force. that this thing which is coming new to our world of silence will corrupt us. Remember 1984, the novel of George Orwell, published around, I think, 1949 or so. It also grappled with this question: what can language do? Should one be aware of the danger of language? Should one be aware of there being too many other tongues? Of course, we talk about mother tongue. Also, the question is, why should we be aware of languages? Why should we be afraid of languages? Then there's also next question which Orwell was fighting with: do languages incorporate elements of freedom in them? Remember then, in this world called Oceania, fictional country called Oceania, where there's a totalitarian super state, which is the big brother looking at you from every corner. He created a language called Newspeak. I hope you remember the expression or system called Newspeak. Why? Because the ruling party thought that this was the only way to meet the ideological requirements of their kind of socialism, which they called INGSOC. Now, Newspeak is a controlled language with a very simplified grammar and very limited vocabulary. The limit is such that it also limits a person's ability to think critically. You can't think critically in a world where only Newspeak is spoken. So you can't voice abstract concepts. So the question of identity, self-expression, free will, these are all a no-no because they are thought crimes in 1984 novel. Now, I was trying to imagine if this is a novel which was the only one in our fiction, um, or were there earlier some fictions where one could imagine complete languagelessness to understand the importance of language. Then I came across Alice O'Connor. Alice O'Connor, as you know, is a Russian who migrated to America and became an American author, started writing in English, and she was born in 1905, but by the time she became famous, it was just the end of World War with her 1943 novel, The Fountainhead. And she used to write with a name Ayn Rand, A-Y-N, Ayn, R-A-N-D, Rand, although her name was Alice O'Connor. Now, Fountainhead became very famous novel, and that allowed her to republish the novel that I am going to talk about today, called Anthem, the novel called Anthem. The Fountainhead had become famous because the novel's protagonist, Howard Rourke, was a young architect who will battle against the conventional standards of architecture. And he will refuse to compromise with all the established architectural principles and procedures and will go against the architectural establishment. But this particular novel that Ayn Rand had written, called Anthem, is a precursor to George Orwell's 1984. This was published in 1937, first in United Kingdom. The story is a very interesting story uh, called Equality 7-2521, story of a person in a land which is in the dark age, where there is no individuality, no identity, no nothing, and it's about a street sweeper called Equality 7 2521. Now, this person actually discovered a pronoun such as I eventually. And Anthem is about this story where he only exclusively used we, our, they, because what is important is the community. Individual is not important at all. So that's the kind of situation that we had, and in Anthem, then the the protagonist has been assigned a job, and one can only do something which is assigned to you by the society. And society says, no, of course, the problem was that even as a child, he had thought that he had a curse because he could learn things very quickly and ask many questions. That's a society where you are not supposed to ask questions. So he excelled in the science of things, and he dreamt of becoming a scholar someday. But the Council of Vocations, the Ministry of Vocation, Jobs, they assigned him uh, a particular kind of life when he was 15-year-old to become a street sweeper. And he accepted it because in that kind of nation state, you assign whatever the state assigns to you, you accept that. So Equality 7 2521 keeps on sweeping the street, and he thought maybe he had transgressed the idea of the government, and therefore he must have the prayashchitta, he must have the penance. But still, he can't get away with the idea of secretly becoming a scholar one day. Now, he worked with the Handicapped Union 5 3992, where there's somebody called International 4 88818, and somehow Equality becomes a friend of this 4 8818. Of course, the friendship is not allowed. Like identity is not allowed, friendship is also not allowed. It's a no kind of thing, it's a transgression. But what to do? They just became friends. And for which, of course, the 4 8818 uh, has been forbidden later, as we can see as the novel progresses. Now, this Equality Fellow explores an underground tunnel near the city theatre, and under the theatre house, in a tent, he finds some metal tracks, and down below, he finds lot of unmentionable things of the distant past for which he doesn't know the names. He has no idea what they are like. So he also discovers there something called electricity. And he thinks maybe if he goes back to the Council of Scholars with this new discovery, they will actually like this very much. Meanwhile, Equality 7 2521 becomes friendly with somebody called Liberty 5 3000. And Liberty 5 3000 is a woman of 18-year-old. She is quite enamored by this man, although in that society, being enamored is not allowed. But she keeps following him wherever he goes, whatever he does. And at this point of time, the home of street sweepers, somebody who is doing the vigil there, noticed that this fellow is sometimes absent because he goes underground to do his experiment. He brings some candlelight, he got some paper from somewhere, he was writing something. So then he had to be punished. So they put him in jail. As they put him in jail, the problem is that there is no concept of being offering a strict vigil in the jail, because nobody has escaped from the jail so far. Any citizen who is put in jail accepts the jail term and remains in the jail. So, but the equality decided that he has to make a presentation to the world of scholars. So he sneaks out of the jail, and next day he presents the electricity idea that this is something new. In fact, the World Council of Scholars was horrified. How can this unauthorized research happen? They actually punish him with greater vengeance. They say that, "Okay, now you will be a gutter cleaner. Okay, you must be punished." So they try to punish him, they try to destroy him, but eventually he understands that this is not a place where he can be in the world without language. So he flees from there, goes into a forest, and Liberty 5-3000 also follows equality into the forest. And in the forest, he discovers the I, the individuality. And for the first time, also discovers you, and says for the first time something like, "I love you," to the woman of her life. He renames himself as Prometheus and renames the lady Liberty 5-3000 as Gaia. Some months later, Gaia becomes pregnant with Prometheus's child. Now, Prometheus starts wondering, how could men in the past have given up their individuality, given up their language? Now, that's the kind of situation that we are talking about in case of languagelessness in a silent world communication. And I think if this kind of a situation emerges, there will be great trouble for human beings. In fact, I would say that languages matter. This kind of novel anthem or 1984, they teach us how languages are so very important for us. Today, as we notice that there is a dwindling of language and identity issue, lot of minority language speakers, as the census comes, next decadal census comes, they shift their identity towards a greater majority. So I won't be surprised if this 1% minority language speakers uh, in some place, wherever they are, where 98, 99% people speak a majority language, same language, they finally agree that they are no more different, they are no more deviant, no more speakers of different languages. They all merge their identity with the majority. Now, this is a very dangerous situation that can happen. And fortunately for our country, we have been there for thousands of years. Yes, it is true that MNO had talked about India as a linguistic area where there is a lot of give and take between Dravidian and the Aryan languages. Each one has borrowed from the other, each one has become like the other. But that's on the surface. But the most important point is it is not that Tamil has given up their identity. It's not that Bangla or Hindi have or Maithili have given up their identity. They have retained their identity. And we are told by uh, 13th, 14th century authors like Jyotirishwara in Mithila, Barnaratnakara, which is edited by Shriti Kumar Chatterjee and Babuaji Mishra for Asiatic Society, that there have been plays, there have been descriptions where there are so many important playwrights in Mithila who wrote plays which were performed by, uh, you know, artists from different parts of India, including the singers came from Karnataka Desha and the dancers came from Telanga Desha. They all were performing Maithili plays of Umapati and Nandipati in the darbar of Malla kings of Nepal. Can you imagine the kind of confluence of languages and ideas which it means were happening in 13th century, 1326 around when the text was built up. So I would say that that's the Indian tradition. The tradition is not to destroy languages. Tradition is to accommodate. Tradition is to borrow. Tradition is to enrich. I think that happens, and that is the strength of our civilization. Because our civilization, we do not entertain a killer language. The killer language concept in language planning and language endangerment came from the West. We do not have killer languages. We have, of course, major languages and minor languages, but they are not minor languages are not minor because they are minor in capability to create. They can also come up with the best possible poems, best possible mythology, best possible writing system. Because, as you know, some dialects of Maithili came up with huge 7-day performance text like Lorik Vijay, Lorikayan, or Raja Salhes, or Naika Banjara. And fortunately for us, Brajkishore Verma Manipadma had written about it. I'm sure there are similar performing texts in various varieties or dialects of Bangla. Uh, and I'm sure there will be in future authors who will write about them, who will bring those ideas to the majority readers. So we have been doing this, and this is something which I would say keeps us going as a civilization. So thank you very much for asking me to speak on Do Languages Matter? And I wish I could be present personally to be able to give this talk to you. But even then, I'm sure this discussion could be taken further by the chair of today, Shamsundar Bhattacharya, and several others who are there. So, with that, I beg your pardon and I take leave of you. Thank you and namaskar.